Poso. All right. I wanted to bring in now Mike Davis from the Article 3 Project. Now, Mike, a lot of people have been going around today looking at this, slicing and dicing this indictment of President Trump, this idea that it seems like they're criminalizing his speech, they're criminalizing his attempts to challenge an election following, oh, by the way, legal processes to do so. There's also been a narrative that I've seen floating around a lot in the last 12 hours or so since this thing has dropped about the Supreme Court. So, Mike, I'd like to ask you, what, if any, would the role of the Supreme Court be in this case?
Well, how this case will proceed, we have this Obama-appointed judge, Tanya Chutkan, who is going to oversee this trial. She has shown in the past that she is unfriendly to President Trump. So there's no chance that President Trump is going to get a fair trial in Washington, D.C. You have this Jack Smith, who is a partisan hitman, who has been brought in by Biden and Garland to take out Trump legally because they fear they can't beat Trump politically in November 2024. You're going to have motions to dismiss the indictment. Judge Chutkan will deny them. She'll deny Trump his ability to put on his full defense that he wants to put on. This will, the D.C. jury, which is like 95% Democrat and 99% Trump deranged, will find him guilty. Judge Chutkan will convict him. It will go to the D.C. Circuit. They will affirm the conviction, and then it will have to get overturned by the Supreme Court. And Jack Smith is used to getting overturned by the Supreme Court. He was overturned unanimously by the Supreme Court after Jack Smith pursued a political prosecution against former Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell, a likely Republican presidential candidate in 2016. But here's the problem, Jack. The Supreme Court is not going to resolve this case for several years. And the Democrats know this. Biden knows this. Garland knows this. Jack Smith knows this. This is about election interference for November 5th, 2024.
So that stands then. Is there any way that President Trump, and I've said this before, you've said this, I think everybody kind of gets it. You bring any charges against President Trump, you put that in front of a D.C. jury, just like trial after trial of anyone who's had even a remote connection with President Trump, D.C. jury, that jury pool finds you guilty. It's 10 out of 10, or I guess 12 out of 12, I would say in this case. That said, so we do expect a conviction coming up. Is there any way for him to expedite this process? Could he expedite it? There are certain things called a writ of certiorari. Can you walk us through what that means to expedite the process with the Supreme Court if he indeed does intend to go down that route?
Well, that's a very good question, Jack, because we're in uncharted territory. Generally, what happens is you have the U.S. District Court hold the trial. The U.S. Circuit Court, in this case, it would be the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, would handle the appeal. And then the Supreme Court actually has discretionary review in most cases, meaning the Supreme Court does not have to take cases. And so when you file a petition for writ of certiorari, you are asking the Supreme Court to exercise its discretionary review. I can't imagine a scenario where the Supreme Court would not take this case and decide this case on the merits, but the issue is timing. I don't see a path where the Supreme Court can take this case and resolve this case before November 2024. And that's the whole game here by Biden and Garland and Jack Smith, is to try to take out Trump before the presidential election. And they don't care what happens. They don't care what the Supreme Court does after the presidential election. And so really, if these cases are going to get resolved, whether it's Alvin Bragg's Lawfare in New York for Trump being charged for the non-crime of a businessman settling a nuisance claim, or Trump being charged for the non-crime by Jack Smith, a former president having his presidential records, which is allowed by the Presidential Records Act, or Trump being charged for the non-crime of objecting to a presidential election, which is allowed by the Electoral Count Act of 1887, and twisting arms politically is allowed by the First Amendment. Jack Smith is pursuing that. Fannie Willis down in Fulton County, Georgia, is going to pursue that later this month, likely. The only way this is going to get resolved, this Democrat lawfare, is by the American people saying enough is enough. We're not going to let Democrat prosecutors and Democrat judges and Democrat juries pick the president of the United States. We get to pick the president of the United States, and the American people can do that on November 5th, 2024, by saying we're going to end this lawfare and put President Trump back in the White House.
So let's look at this. And, they say over and over again, amateurs talk strategy, professionals talk logistics. So logistically speaking, is there a possibility for them or for the Trump legal team in this sense? Because we understand that he's been summoned tomorrow. I don't know if that's changed yet, but he's been summoned tomorrow in Washington, D.C. That could be changed. Of course, we saw it changed for the Miami court appearance. We also saw it changed for the New York court appearance in that was a state level charge. So is it possible then that when it comes to the trial date that he could even argue to push this back because he could point out that the same Department of Justice and the same special counsel has already given him another trial that they're going on at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be interesting how they juggle this. We have Alvin Bragg's trial up in New York. I think that's set for March of 2024. I think the Mar-a-Lago trial is set for May of 2024. You have Tish James, the New York Attorney General, bringing her bogus civil fraud lawsuit against Trump for the non-fraud of President Trump paying back banks in full. And so I don't know how that would be fraud. You have Fani Willis, who's likely to bring another indictment down in Fulton County, Georgia. And just if you step back, remember, Merrick Garland and Jack Smith waited 31 months to bring these charges against President Trump. What is the rush? I mean, they clearly brought these charges to time them because President Biden was facing his own serious and credible allegations of foreign corruption, that Biden and his family took tens of millions of dollars from China and Ukraine and Romania and other trouble spots around the world illegally, corruptly. And so all of a sudden, Jack Smith wants to bring superseding indictments in the Mar-a-Lago case, and then this new indictment for the January 6th case. I mean, they're going to have to juggle all this, and President Trump has to be able to put on his defense. And by the way, this case is not some simple case that Jack Smith is bringing here. It's bogus as a matter of law, but factually, it's very complicated. You're looking at 7 co-conspirators. You're looking at 7 different states. You're looking at dozens and dozens of potential witnesses. President Trump's going to has to be able to call these witnesses and gather evidence for his defense. And who knows? I mean, I doubt that Judge Tanya Chutkan, this Obama-appointed judge in D.C. overseeing this trial, is going to go give him a fair trial. But I mean, she at least has to pretend, I would think, that he can gather evidence to present for his defense, and that's going to take quite a bit of time. I mean, there's no chance that this is going to get resolved in 6 months like Jack Smith thinks. This is going to take well over a year, and then you're into the presidential election, and then what happens then? You're going to make a leading presidential candidate sit in a courtroom during a presidential election. That's just not going to fly with the American people.
Well, I think that's right. I've even seen some people out there, folks, so I would say categorize them more as the National Review bunch. And I know you remember I got into it a little bit with Andy McCarthy over the last indictment, that even those guys are saying, well, hold on a second. We were on board with some of the Mar-a-Lago stuff. And I know you and I dissected their analysis, but those guys are even saying, wait, this thing is a joke. Now you're diverting your energy and your time into this nonsense as opposed to simply focusing on the Mar-a-Lago stuff. So even the Never Trumpers are now getting worried that they've split their time. Mike, final minute to you.
Yeah, I mean, this is the Jack Smith is the Michael Avenatti of the Democrat lawfare against President Trump. He is a clown. He's proven in the past that he brings bogus cases against Republican presidential candidates or likely Republican presidential candidates, like he did with Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell. He doesn't care if the Supreme Court reverses him unanimously. He obviously doesn't have any shame. He's back for round 2. That Merrick Garland brought him back. He's a Scud missile that Democrats use to take out Republican presidential candidates. We're on to his game this time. It's not going to work. The American people are going to put President Trump back in the White House after November 5th, 2024, and all this lawfare is going to end.
Folks, go and file Mike Davis. Go and support him. Go check out all of his writings. Mike, I know you've got a pretty extensive dance card today in terms of your interview, so I appreciate you taking time with us.
Thank you so much, Jack.